Good morning, thank you for coming. Would like to acknowledge that we are on unceded traditional land of the Coast Salish people. And this is the 30th year to the Montreal Massacre. My name is Hila, I'm a collective member of Vancouver Rape Relief and Women's Shelter. And our first panel for today is Beautiful Trouble, Wit and Creativity in Feminist Agitation. As feminists, as activists, we are constantly looking for ways to articulate our analysis of our oppression and our vision for our liberation. We want to connect and engage with our allies. We want to expose and challenge our enemies. We want to encourage and reinforce our sisters in struggle. And we want to urge, compel, agitate, and inspire people to act. Our first conversation today is with Tamar, Claire, and one angry girl. They each have been producing smart, creative, and effective feminist propaganda. We ask them to speak about the messages of their political work, the platforms they choose to do so, and the impact it has on or the engagement it creates with other women. They will each speak for 10 minutes approximately, and Laura will hold a sign saying time's up, a minute before time's really up. And after they will speak, you will have a chance to ask, add, comment, be part of the conversation. And we will start with sisterhood.
As sister opens the back door, a woman walks in. Sister removes woman's mask, reveals a green and yellow stain. Sister puts on hot water and lets the tea steep. The woman opens her mouth and the dam breaks. They follow water down to the ocean, where her stories meet. Woman pulls on loose strings of her tattered fabric. Sister gives a hand, woman flinches systematic. In silence, sip, sip, and sip. Faucet fills the tub, drip, drip, and drip. Sister lays her dresses on the peaceful bed. Woman takes time to select the purple, pink, or red. Sister, woman, woman, sister. When you a sister, when you a woman, when you a sister, woman. Every woman needs a sister. Every sister needs a hood. Every woman needs a sister. Every sister needs a hood. Woman sucks her skin, splashes at the bubbles. Root turns to rust, taking on her troubles. Woman steps so bare breast, turns to pull the drain. Daddy water gargles, only scummy ring remains. Sister knocks and brings a towel. Together they scrub off the foul. Conscious mirror waits to see who the woman chooses to be. Sister finds her standing tall as there were no storm at all. Sister gestures to the chair, strong fingers entangles her hair. Splits in 3 and 6 to 9, break for each a waste of time. Woman shoulders sister's hand, missing tarnished wedding band. Sister, woman, woman, sister. When you a sister, when you a woman, when you a sister, woman. Every woman needs a sister. Every sister needs a hood. Every woman needs a sister. Every sister needs a hood. Hands extended, interlinked. A silence witness doesn't blink. Penny sounds an echoed story. woman reaches into dress. Not enough to build a future, just enough to take a step. Sister brushes up the palette, pay 3 lines across her cheek, warriors adore. Set the face, power, fresh Vaseline. Sister, woman, woman, sister. When you a sister, when you a woman, when you a sister, woman, sister, woman, woman, sister. When you a sister, when you a woman, when you a sister, woman, every woman needs a sister, every sister needs a hood, every woman needs a sister, every sister needs a hood.
So Tamar will speak about the production of the movie and the work of the Music Laboratory.
Yes, my name is Tamar Dina. I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and that's where this project took place. I can tell you a little bit about how it's done, and I'm very happy to speak to you outside of this panel if you want just to talk to somebody else, if you're interested in doing your own project or whatever. It's so easy now to work long distance. My intentions in this project and in anything else that I'm doing that's collaborative with other women is really to try to get women to see themselves as artists and to start being in the world as artists, because it's one of the few ways you can escape the constraints that we're born into. So it's like when you tell yourself you're an artist, you can suddenly do things that other people said you can't do, like wear anything you want and say anything you want. It's just a mental frame that can open a door for you, and that's why I really want women to identify it, regardless of whether you think that you're talented or not. That, in fact, the talent, there's so many myths about what is an artist and how you become an artist, and so many of them serve white men in particular in terms of our colonial past, but just even as active agents in a civil society, just we're increasingly getting used to deferring to other people. So I really want women to think of themselves as artists and practice as artists, even if you think you're fake, just because it gives you an avenue to get out of every day. And then also, perhaps you might find that you like it, and then you can continue in that. This process of making this film took a long time. And almost all aspects were collaborative, and some were more successful than others. And I'm happy to share with you also privately, if you're trying to do this kind of stuff, where I thought I made mistakes and where I thought there was success. So this project started just like with kind of basic workshops and getting women to come up with the lyrics. You can, I don't know if you noticed in the project, maybe it happened too fast, our angle and the message of the song is not to give a battered woman instruction, which is often the case. You know, get it together, or this is what's available to you. The emphasis with battered women is always what she can do, or if it's directed at us, what we can do to get out of this situation. There's very little conversation telling men to just go away, for example. But if we're just speaking from women to other women, there's very little that is a calling on women who are not in trouble to take care of women when they are in trouble and to give them a break. So we made a very conscious effort in the writing of the lyrics of this song to put the attention on a woman who was not currently being battered. But if you look at the lyrics, and you'll notice that the second character, there's two characters in the song, and the second character has been there already. That's what she's drawing on in order to help this other woman out. The lyrics you can find, this is part one of the project. Part two of the project we call Sisterhood Cover Me, which you can just go online and see, sisterhoodcoverme.com, and where originally we tried to get women to cover the whole song. That was a pipe dream. Now we just cut the catchy hook. Sister woman, like I'm sure we could sing it even, like just to join that. But even in that hook, the call is, you know, when you're a woman, when are you in need of a sister, and when are you a sister? And every woman needs a sister, and every sister needs a hood, and every sister needs a hood is about organized feminist resistance. But we didn't use that language. It was just the promotion of that. We need it. I think that a couple other things that we wanted to insist on, maybe you noticed in the film or not, is about the intimacy that women offer each other. We wanted to make that visual. And this was all done through a collective process. So the first parts was we got together in a library. Libraries has always been important public space. And worked out the lyrics together as a group. And that group changed. That's why you see so many women listed. Like we just kept on adapting to what were the needs of women's lives. If they couldn't commit to coming regularly, we incorporated what they had to say as much as possible, but incorporated into the credits. And the credits is a whole other thing too in terms of the hierarchical pyramid of how we tell people what their contributions is to a project. And we didn't feel that we had enough women that was part of the lyric process, so we opened it up and had like an evening together at the Native Friendship Center, and probably got another 30 women involved there to help us interpret those lyrics into a visual representation that then shaped how the video was made. And we're particularly proud of the whole project, including the technical aspects. So the person on camera and the person doing the sound mixing and the person doing the sound mastering was all done by women. But it did mean that we had to get the help with the sound had to be from Toronto, because there was those women with those technical skills did not exist at the level that we needed them to in Halifax. So look at that, they go by way faster than you think, I'll tell you that. Thank you very much.
Okay, hi, my name is Claire. I am Sister Outrider, Black Radical Feminist blogger. I'm also just recovering from a cold, so let me know if you can't hear me, I'll speak up. I write from a Black lesbian feminist standpoint. That was a very conscious decision when I was establishing my blog. This is a perspective that is often missing in mainstream British feminist spaces and conversations. I had noticed that of the lesbian voices that were most often heard, they were white women's, and of the Black women's voices most regularly heard, they were straight, and I felt like something was missing in a lot of conversations we were having. So I started my blog writing to try and address the issue of racism in the feminist movement. The benefit of a blog is that it's there as a resource that can be accessed again and again by people on their own. And basically, this was a blessing for me because I was having the same conversations over and over again, which took quite a lot of mental and emotional labor trying to explain how racism worked, how it affected me negatively, how it affected other women, how it existed as a structural issue. And that was quite draining, but having a blog is something helpful and constructive to offer people without having to reenact the same pieces of labor again and again. That was very valuable. It grew into something I could never have anticipated. Like when I started writing Sister Outrider, I genuinely thought like maybe 15 people, maybe including my mum over there, would be accessing my blog. Instead, I have an international readership of thousands, and it has been translated into multiple languages. That is something I could never have predicted and still find incredibly humbling, that people are so willing to engage with what I have to say with such enthusiasm and openness, because I do intend my writing as a calling in rather than a calling out. I view words as a way of building bridges between women, creating points of connection and understanding. I write, every piece of writing I put on my blog, it starts with a belief, a confidence in women, a trust that they're going to meet what I have to say. And it's not always easy to keep that openness, but I do think it's something that I work to preserve in myself because it's a fundamental part of my feminist politics and how I choose to live them. The most urgent and necessary things I want to write are often the most difficult to communicate, because when you send a bit of writing out into the world, you never entirely know how it's going to be received. It gets a kind of second life in how other people choose to interpret it that goes far beyond what you as the author could anticipate. And in some ways that can be quite challenging, but it's also really invigorating because it shows that the writing has a life of its own. Sister Outrider is a WordPress blog. I chose this format because blogs are free to make and they are also free to access, and that accessibility thing was very important to me starting out. Like, I appreciate there's so much value in academic feminist writing, but at the same time I'm really conscious that it's going to reach a limited number of women, often the ones with the most social and economic power, which isn't fair, and it's not the kind of feminist politics I want my work to embody. I want my work to be readable and shareable. Digital feminist spaces were the first ones I'd ever really felt heard and seen in. They were the first environment where I felt conscious that my perspective was valued. That gave me the confidence to create the blog and start using my voice purposefully, raising it in dissent. Another advantage of the blog is that it's relatively easy to gain traction. Black women are successfully using digital media to build platforms for ourselves in a way that wasn't often possible with traditional gatekeeping and barriers in old media. And this has enabled more and more Black feminists to use our voices on our own terms, and in so doing connect with women. More of us have constructed the space to build and participate in communities, which I do think is a vital part of modern Black feminist writing. And yeah, I'm really conscious that I've gone over my time, but if you have anything to ask in the Q&A, I'd be more than happy to answer. Thank you all so much for listening.
Also, some of us will have lunch with Claire tomorrow, and if you're interested to join us, let us know and we'll get you a seat at the table.
Please do.
So One Angry Girl, we've noticed her designs. While first the name is really compelling, but we noticed her design quite a few years ago, and there is something about walking with a t-shirt in the world, you're wearing your message. And also we were really compelled about her action around abortion, so this is how we describe her. And we discover you, but we will let you carry on from that.
My name's Jill. I usually don't give out my full name just for privacy, but you can call me Jill, and I'm just gonna ramble for 10 minutes because I did not practice. Thank you to Hilla and Laurel and everyone who made this possible. It's crazy that I'm here. I live in Connecticut, and we're like, I don't know how far from Connecticut right now. So I became a feminist around the age of 15 when I read a Susan Brown Miller book. It became an activist around 22. The reason I became an activist is because I was experiencing a lot of sexual harassment, a little bit in high school, and then more straight harassment. I had a summer job in Times Square at MTV, and I had to run a lot of errands. And I don't know if anyone's experienced Times Square, but it's not a nice place. And every time I left the building, I was harassed by strangers. And in my head, I was thinking of what to say to these men, and I knew it wasn't safe to actually yell things at them. So I started collecting things I wanted to say and writing them down. Then I moved to Portland, Oregon, and again, I was walking around and riding the bus and in public and also getting harassed a lot. And then I just decided I couldn't live with all this stuff in my head anymore, and I wanted to share it with the world. But I was poor, I was working for minimum wage. This was 1996. There really was no internet, so to speak. There was definitely no social media, and there was really no way that I could share my brilliance with the world except I thought of t-shirts. Like, if I could have rented a bunch of billboards, I would have done that, but I didn't have that kind of money. My mother had sent me $100 to pay the phone bill. Instead, I spent it on 12 t-shirts that said, "Fuck your fascist beauty standards," which is the minimum number of t-shirts you can buy for an order. Had them printed up in Gresham, started selling them to friends. I went around, like, "Hi, do you want to sell this t-shirt in your store?" And a couple of stores in Portland took them on consignment. Then I started making catalogs. Basically, I would chop up Victoria's Secret catalogs and paste my shirts on top of the models, and that was very subversive. I did everything by hand. I don't know if you remember Riot Girl, but I was kind of influenced by them, and also Jenny Holzer and Ani DeFranco, who at that time was all the rage, and she had her own record company. So those were my three influences. I wrote up a bunch of press releases. I told people I was taking over the world one shirt at a time. I mean, you can say anything you want, really. I was 23, so it seemed like a reasonable thing to say. I sent them out to a bunch of places. I sent them to Ms. Magazine. I got written up in Ms. Magazine, on the last page where they have short bits, and they printed my phone number. So then people started calling my house and asking for catalogs. I wouldn't do this now. And my roommates were having to write down people's addresses so that I could send them catalogs. And everything was by mail at that point. I don't know if you remember the 90s, but we didn't email, we didn't text, we just mail. I have so much mail. And so I'm sending people catalogs, and they're sending me back checks in the mail, which doesn't happen anymore. And I'm sending them t-shirts, and that was how my business started. One of my selling points was that I was offering plus sizes. I offered up to 6XL, which is hard to find. I added more shirts. My second shirt said "not intended for decorative use," which was like a stamp. I had a shirt about street harassment, which was really poorly designed, and I discontinued it because it didn't look nice. Then I moved to Boston, started a website, because now you had to have a website. Still, people are sending me checks because I couldn't figure out how to do the other thing. My big break came when I found the phrase in a quote book, "Well-behaved women rarely make history." You guys know that, I'm sure. So I basically tracked down Laurel Thatcher Ulrich, who's an expert on Puritan women. I found her, this took a long time, I found her through her editor, and after multiple attempts to contact her, she finally called me. She's like, "Yeah, you can print that, that's fine, I don't care." She had no idea what was gonna happen. So it became a huge hit. I got a distribution deal with Northern Sun. I have sold about 17,000 of that shirt, the shirt that says "Well-behaved women rarely make history," mostly through Northern Sun. And you get royalties, so that's nice. But then you start developing copycats, people start putting it on everything. And I couldn't copyright Laurel's slogan because it's hers, and apparently you can't copyright a slogan anyway, unless you're like Coca-Cola, and then you can. So people start copying me, I start getting irritated, etc. Laurel starts making a lot of money. At some point, I'm living in Boston, I come out as anti-porn, which was shameful, I guess. I start doing like mailers where I'm mailing people information. This is all still before social media. I'm getting a lot of fan mail. I'm like developing relationships with these people. We're like friends. I started a little mailer called My Own Private Revolution to like connect them with each other. There are 2 women who met and are best friends now through my mailers because like they contacted each other. I get a lot of fan mail. I gather some women together for like a power lunch. Somebody takes the bus from Philadelphia to New York to have lunch with me. This was cool. This was all by myself. I did everything alone, which was why it's One Angry Girl. But there are some limitations to working alone, as we will, I'm sure, discuss. Then I get married, move to the suburbs. That's where things start to go downhill. Because I'm not walking around in the streets anymore and nobody's harassing me. I'm driving, I've got kids, nobody's harassing a mom with a stroller. So I don't have as much anger. And also, once you start actually doing the activism, you're not as angry anymore. You start to become calmer. So that, inversely, I don't have as many slogan ideas. But I am expanding into bumper stickers, like Well-Behaved Women is a bumper sticker, Start a Revolution, Stop Hating Your Body, that's mine, that's a bumper sticker. I do a postcard, I do a poster. I'm still, selling lots of history shirts. Oh, I add the Anti-Porn Resource Center to my website, oneangergirl.net. I start offering like light vandalism supplies, like stamps that you can stamp your money with, like that say spent by a feminist. Not a big seller. Then I start, I think I discovered the Ms. boards. Does anyone remember the Ms. message boards? And I start to do more activism collecting with women online, because now we're like able to talk to each other online, which I think before it was all just companies selling you stuff, but now there's like user-generated content. So I start doing these actions, like we start activisting against Cafe Press for selling like horrible merchandise. There's like this hunting for Bambi thing. Does anybody remember this? Okay. Well, it turned out it wasn't true, but there was this guy in Las Vegas selling paintball shoots of naked women who were like pretending to be deer, and you would like hunt them in the desert and shoot them with paintball guns. And I was like, this has to stop. So I organized this big campaign, and I'm like threatening that like the whole state of Nevada with a boycott. I was really out of control. But I don't know, I did a whole bunch of stuff. I started a website called nopornpledge.com, which is like for people to just sign a thing saying I'm not going to use porn anymore, because I wanted like a visual representation of how many people felt that way, because everybody thinks like I'm the only one. And I'm like, no, there's pages and pages of people. Eventually I had 3 websites. This is maybe the high point of my activism. I'm running around stickering, I'm like hanging flyers. We hung a banner over the highway that said like, women and girls are raped to make your pornography. That was exciting. I'm still making shirts, but social media comes up and my business starts to decline, and at first I can't figure out why. And I eventually figure out like, why would you buy this if you could just tweet it for free? Like, why would you spend $15 on a message if you could just like take a picture of it and share it on Facebook? And that's sort of where activism has gone. I don't know how many people wear slogan shirts anymore. Also, the graphics have kind of changed. Like my stuff is like this, and now today the shirts are more like down all the whole shirt. So that was like my fault for not adapting. I also didn't really adapt well to social media initially. I was like, I don't need to do that. But eventually I get a Facebook page. I was kind of a slow adapter to technology in general. So long story short, business starts to dry up, time's up. I guess I would just say, on the whole, I had a good run. It was 20 years. Decide to close my business, sell off my inventory. I get a tattoo of One Angry Girl, my mascot, on my ankle, which I will show you later. Can't show you right now. I had 20 different shirt slogans. I sold 25,000 shirts. So somewhere in the world, there are 25,000 people who have my shirts walking around. Some of my phrases have entered the public domain. Like if you type in "fuck your fascist beauty standards" into Google, you get 700,000 hits. Start a revolution, you get like 32 million hits. Well-Behaved Women's everywhere. Can I just have like 1 more minute? Okay, thanks. Things I've learned is that there's only so much one person can do alone. Like, unless you're Greta, and then apparently it's easy. But I was working alone, that was kind of my thing. I don't work well in groups, but there is a limit, and it's probably better to organize. I feel like I had a good run, and I had a lot of fun. Do I see a larger cultural impact of my work? I don't really see it, honestly. People like my slogans, but I don't think women have gotten safer overall, which is sort of what I was hoping for. So I'm a little disappointed, but I did what I could, and I'm pretty proud of myself. Thanks for listening.
So you can't see, but the writing on the yellow shirt says, take up space. And part of our theory is that not one slogan, not one article, not one catchy phrase, even if it's Me Too, will change the world, but the accumulation of the messages and having them in the air reinforce individual women and women as a whole's resistance. It's just constant reinforcement that we're not alone, we're doing the right thing, there is a hope. We have, today we'll be featuring Andrea working quite a lot, and we picked, you can pick a bookmark, but we also put it over there. I believe social change is possible. That's why I'm an activist. That's why we're an activist. We're activists. So about the t-shirt, we think t-shirt is a really great idea. Rape Relief always have been done t-shirts, and just monitor our website, because next year we will do a workshop for women to come together, think about witty slogans and printing them on a t-shirt. So we're gonna try to follow up on that. And now you.
I'm very happy to be here and very glad you women are organizing this event. Rape Relief and Claire and One Angry Girl are all a little bit international online celebrities. Tamara, I don't think so quite yet, but it would be interesting to talk a little bit about some of the points this woman just raised. She said, coming here, seeing you in person, meeting the Rape Relief women in person, broke her isolation. She never knew what was available in her own city in terms of feminist organizing. I experience a lot of women online saying, there's nobody in my town like me, there's nobody to work with, I don't speak the language good enough to talk to feminists in my town. I kind of see those as a bit an excuse, and I kind of see the online public education that you women do as being very important in raising women's understanding of what's possible. But could you say about what you've seen to work or what you could see that the online stuff can motivate grouping locally in cities around the world?
Sure. Well, for me, a lot of people seem to see it as a binary of online or in person. For me, the two feed into each other quite naturally, and through engaging with feminist communities online, I have peopled my everyday life with the most incredible women, most of them lesbian feminists. And I don't think that one necessarily has to come at the expense of the other. But yeah, I absolutely see your point about how people can use online activism as a kind of way of not engaging with physical spaces, and that is frustrating, but also digital media is incredible at getting women to mobilize. Like, things like the Women's March were so successful because of how that message was shared and encouraged women to join in, find their local chapter, and get out on the streets. It can be powerful when it works right, but it's still relatively new, and we're all trying to figure out how to balance digital citizenship with our responsibilities in feminist communities offline.
So some of us prepared ahead of time because they're part of us.
I just, first, hi, I'm Danny. I'm from Vancouver Rape Relief and Women's Shelter. I'm part of the collective. So this is Leticia. I found her like randomly scrolling on social media, and I think her messages are really powerful. She is 23 years old only, and she's from West Africa. And she became viral on 2017, and just with like a simple series of hair sculptures. There was no message on it. It was just like funny stuff. And then from 4,000 followers, she went to I think 10,000 followers, and now she has over 250,000 followers. And she became, like, first she was not doing anything political, so it was just like funny stuff, but now she uses her Instagram account to spread like important messages on male violence against women, but also like environment concerns, guns culture, and so on. So, and like abortion rights. She gets message from like different women talking about their own stories, and sometimes she creates like her hair like on their stories, about their stories. So if you want to like have a look on her message, you can go to Instagram, and it's at Letitia Key. And yeah.
My name's Laurel. I was the timer, and now I'm on the mic. I want to thank all of the panelists for sharing a bit about your work today. It was deeply inspiring for me, and I hope the same for the audience. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I heard about the woman who created the billboard that's displayed on the screen right now. Oh, I can't really make it out from here. Hila, can you read it?
Half blind. Can you read it? I'm Stephanie. I was raped by a guy like this in a place like that. I told the club and the police, but no one did anything, so I painted this billboard.
So Stephanie Montgomery, she lives in Los Angeles, and she created this billboard, and it's depicting her exacting vengeance on the man who raped her. His name is Jason Borba, and it happened at a strip club that she was working at. And he had been a bouncer but was a client in this circumstance. So she made this after turning to her employer and to the police for help. And she had heard previously that he had done this to other women, and she knew he would continue to do so unless he was held accountable. So when the police decided not to charge him, and her employer just offered her some money to keep quiet about the attack, she turned to her art for justice. So this attention-capturing billboard was unveiled in a very close location to that club where it all happened. So I wanted to share kind of an alternative way of how she found justice for herself, and I think it's deeply inspiring to other women as well.
I do want to say on the topic of the online is that we don't control the tools, though. Like, we are using them and we can make them work for us to a certain extent, but these are very powerful men who are in charge of these, and we're obviously useful to them in our engagement with it. I would say in the Sisterhood Project, you know, the practice of coming together and trying to make a specific product in an alternative structure where you're trying to not reenact the same power structures that we live in every day requires negotiation between women that we're not used to. And when we're practicing, the reason I press for the practicing of art, and in particularly in collaboration with other women in a room together, is so that we get a little closer to used to actually dealing with power more explicitly, and kind of trying to, especially if we're really serious about saying we want to control our lives and we want to control the world that we live in, because it's very difficult to accept that kind of responsibility. I think in many ways criticizing is valid. I do it all the time. It's probably a favorite hobby, but actually when you have to then imagine a shift in power and trying to imagine accepting power, which includes making mistakes and being responsible for in a way that you haven't about other people's lives. These types of figuring out how to work together as women has to be done together, and it can't be done facilitated online, because we're actually living human beings that you can touch. Like, I get it. I go to the internet also because if I'm feeling isolated, but you know, that's like, I gotta say, it's kind of temporary in terms of making me feel better. Like I can know, okay, she's out, maybe she's out there and she's not in my city, but I'm still in my city. I'm still here. So, like, yeah, I get it, but I am particularly suspicious of who's in control of these technologies and what their priorities are, as much as we can subvert them. Because the damage of the internet, especially in relationship to pornography and sex trafficking, I think far outweighs the benefits we're getting as feminists. So. I also want to say about the practice of art and why I press it, and even the examples that we're seeing here today, is that you're taking very difficult circumstances, and this is what I admire so much about what Black American people have done with the arts since they were forced to come to this continent, is the use of the arts to transform their reality, but also as some basic communication to each other about concrete things. If you're thinking about using music and hair in terms of information about the Underground Railroad, I feel like the nature of women's oppression is isolation. And so, you know, you can't go out and tell your sister, yeah, my man's beating me at home. Sometimes you really just can't. And so, but maybe there's a way, and then, you know, try to experiment with this a bit in the music, is to actually transfer information to each other. For example, like we were discussing, like, I love the idea of hiding money away from your batterer and then like having a stash and getting away without him even knowing. So that idea we tried to tuck into the song, idea about hiding money. And in the discussion was, well, we don't want that to be the only way for a woman to escape, as if she had money. So then we negotiated the lyrics of that line. I think that I wish much more had come out of this project than it did. But in terms of negotiation and dialogue and trying to transfer information through the form, I think we did not bad. It would be ideal if other music was coming back at us and there was more exchange in music. In particular, and this last thing I'll say is that if you listen to music, even music written by women, it's almost always not directed to other women. It's either in general to people or it's to men. A lot of music is written for men. And we're not speaking across music and using music, which is outside of logic in many ways. It's an emotional medium. So yeah, I press us to try to use art to try to talk to each other and maybe even transfer some real concrete, valuable information to each other.
Hi, I'm Ashani. I'm a collective woman at Vancouver Rape Relief. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about why feminist agitation is really important from the crisis science perspective. We were hosting a support group at our documentation center where we host support group, and we had an image from one of Andrea Dworkin's books that essentially had the woman and all the things she has to alter and modify in her body just throughout her life. And one of the women commented that, like, it just really verbalized for her what she'd been going through. And for her, it just all the anger and resentment that had built up over the course of her marriage, this picture expressed all of that. And so even as a crisis worker meeting with women in our house with all this feminist artwork, it just really screams to women that this is a place you can come and be angry. And that's why I really feel like that artwork is really important, because when you're searching for the words and searching for just how to express what you've been going through and the rage, it's just one really clear way. And that's to segue into my point for Claire. To be a Black radical feminist, it's quite lonely. And when I think about the sort of feminist theory that I consume, it was Black women sort of taking themselves apart from the movement and creating the kitchen press or something that could publish feminist material, because we were locked out of academic spaces, but we're also sort of locked out of the Black rights movement because there wasn't really a time for women at the time. And so now when I see that, I also am consuming Black feminist theory from podcasts and from blogs. I wonder what you think about it's not really a way that women can support themselves and survive, and how do you propagate and keep that sort of feminist theory going when it's sort of so on the fringe?
How to keep it going? Well, that's a difficult one, because when I started my blog, I had zero expectation of having any kind of widespread engagement. It is a thing that happened, I guess, sorry? Okay. It's a thing that kind of happened organically over time through community engagement. That's not to say those community engagements were always straightforward. I think my work, particularly around racism in the feminist movement, has been met with a lot of resistance as well as open engagement. And it is what you say about that history of Black women making spaces for their voices to be heard, like the kitchen table press. I think that self-definition and that way of carving a space out for yourself is essential. It's like that Audre Lorde quote about how she has to define herself, otherwise she's going to be swallowed up in other people's expectations of who and what she is. Because when you are a Black radical feminist, I'm always like acutely conscious of there are the things I want to say and there are the things I believe, but equally there are all these expectations attached to me by white women in the movement who want the convenience of having a Black person saying this, and negotiating those expectations as well as staying true to my principles is complicated, and it's something that is not easily resolvable. I wish I could offer you a definite answer or words of encouragement, but these things, like movement building, is messy, it's difficult, it's at times challenging, but it's also, when it goes right, so fundamentally rewarding. I wish you the best of luck.
If you didn't muster the courage to speak up, the following panel, which will focus on backlash and resistance, I'm sure will be a perfect fit for what you had to say about this panel. I have 3 points to make. This is the Invisible Men Project. It's a very effective exposure of what men say about women in prostitution. Our allies in England had one about men who buy women in England, but in 2013, when the government was negotiating a new bill, Bill C-36, calling for the criminalization of men who buy women in prostitution, they went on Canadian website where men discuss and grade women in prostitution and created this for us. So that's a very good example of international support, very, very effective agitation material.
Is this available?
Yes, it's called invisiblemen.ca. It's very, very triggering, and I know other women in prostitution are really avoiding looking at it.
It's making me fucking nauseous.
Okay.
Like, seriously not. Like,
So put something else.
But is this available like in a wearable form?
No.
No, not yet.
No, yeah, okay. The other thing I wanted to promote is Rain and Thunder. They're still doing things in the old way. They actually produce hard copy magazine. It's a radical feminist American magazine. You will be able to grab a copy at 5 o'clock at our feminist book swap, but they're worth looking at and getting a membership, a subscription. The subscription is based on your income, so it's very, very feasible. And other points I wanted to make, that if you want to produce feminist materials, we invite you to use our endless craft supply. We have equipment, we have a top-notch photocopier, sharp paper cutter, paint, glue, poster boards. We have very good arrangement with small local businesses who can do professional printing on wood and foam core. All the stuff that you see in all 3 rooms were designed in-house, most of it produced in-house, but the big foam cores and the big wood, we got those local businesses to do it for us, and they give us a great price, and they will to you if you go through us. We also have, Lauren, we have women with carpentry skill. She builds a stand outside, and she will be happy to help you if you have some project that involve wooden work in mind. If you produce writing, image, audio recording, or video, you're welcome to use our platforms. We have a website, a blog, and a podcast, which Flo talked about. And I already said that sometime next year we will do a t-shirt printing workshop. My message will be, resist patriarchy, grow your armpit hair. My t-shirt. So we're going to give you 5 to 10 minutes to go and have coffee. The coffee is the end of the moat, which means that you will have a chance to go through the other 2 rooms with a really impressive display. In one room, you will see 1 month in the front line, stories of 107 women who called us 1 month sometime in the last year. And in the other room, there is a learning center about the Montreal Massacre and a timeline about backlash against women and women's resistance from 1989 to 2019. And there is a spot for you to add your vision of how will it be to have a world when women are free. So you are welcome to attend to that. There will be much more time later on to engage with those rooms. I just wanted to give you a heads up. We're going to take 5 minutes. We're going to meet again here at 11:30 for the next panel.